All right, look, every starship captain breaks the rules a little bit, but there's a line. You can't just kill people for your own convenience. Unless the person you kill used to be two people and you're killing him to bring back the two people he used to be because you liked it better that way. That's fine, but anything other than that, and you're in big trouble. This is a review of the Star Trek Voyager episode Equinox. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know if the Starfleet captain who has gone astray gets a last-second redemption, be warned. Spoilers beyond this point. Hey, it's the episode where Captain Janeway makes a series of questionable decisions that lead to her and Chakotay falling out. Wait, which one is this? We're off and running with action aboard a ship that is not Voyager, where the crew is being attacked by flying space tadpoles who appear out of small portals and kill people by turning them into instant mummies. That's not an ideal situation. The captain puts out a distress call, and the call is received by Captain Janeway, Chakotay, and 7 of 9 in Voyager's astrometrics lab. Janeway's like, "Hey, that's Captain Ransom of the starship Equinox. I've heard of him. He made first contact with a species everyone else thought was extinct. Let's go help him since we happen to be in the neighborhood." Voyager arrives at the location of the Equinox to find the other ship in pretty bad shape. Captain Ransom answers Janeway's hail with an immediate plea for Voyager to extend its shields around the Equinox. Once that's done, Janeway sends rescue teams over to the Equinox to evacuate the crew to Voyager. Janeway finds Captain Ransom on the Equinox bridge, where he tells her that his ship was yanked to the Delta Quadrant by the caretaker, just like Voyager was. Once everyone is safe aboard Voyager and cleaned up, Janeway assigns various members of the Voyager and Equinox crew to work together in teams to repair the Equinox and make ready defenses for whatever devilish alien species has been attacking the Equinox. The angry flying space tadpoles are still out there trying to penetrate Voyager's shields, and 7 estimates they'll only be able to hold out for 2 days before the tadpoles are able to break through. We meet some more of the Equinox crew. There's Burke, the first officer, who, hey, small galaxy, is B'Elanna's ex-boyfriend from the academy. How about that? He still seems up for it, too. He invites her to dinner right in front of her current boyfriend, Tom Paris, like a boss. Burke has a nickname for B'Elanna, BLT. Paris doesn't get it, so B'Elanna explains it with the level of detail typically only necessary when speaking to a 4-year-old. BLT, like the sandwich, bacon, lettuce, and tomato. Also, it's my initials. B'Elanna teases Tom about being jealous and walks off, leaving Harry to get in the final dig by referring to Tom as turkey platter, which, okay, I've got to give it up. That's a nice exchange. At first, I thought the BLT exposition was way too much, but bacon, lettuce, and tomato was there to set up Harry hitting Tom with turkey platter. Good job. Though, it is always a little disorienting whenever Voyager characters display random bursts of personality like that. We also meet Gilmore, who has a touch of claustrophobia, and Lessing, who 7 helped to rescue from the Equinox and seems set up to form some kind of bond with 7 as a result, which never happens, but you should remember Lessing for later anyway, okay? Janeway and Ransom have a chat on the bridge of the Equinox. Ransom mentions some unspecified modifications they've made to their ship's engine, which has enabled their ship, which is much smaller and slower than Voyager, to make it just as far back toward the Alpha Quadrant as Voyager. He also tells Janeway about their hellish first week in the Delta Quadrant when a conflict with hostile aliens resulted in the deaths of half of the Equinox crew. Then Ransom says, "Hey, so totally arbitrary question here, apropos of nothing, but since you've been in the Delta Quadrant, have you committed any atrocities?" Nope. Me neither. Ha ha ha. Ransom finds Burke in the mess hall on Voyager and says, "So we have a problem. I don't think these Voyager people are going to be cool with the evil thing we've been doing. Make sure nobody gets inside the lab of dark secrets aboard the Equinox." Seven and Tuvok have worked out a way to modify Voyager's field generator to automatically trap any flying space tadpoles in a force field if they get through the shields and jump out of one of their little portals. With the space tadpole threat still ongoing, and with Equinox being so badly damaged, Janeway decides the best move is to abandon the Equinox. Ransom and Burke object, but Janeway has looked up Starfleet regulations, and in this situation, since Voyager is the tactically superior vessel, she's in charge. As salvage operations continue on the Equinox, Seven and Tuvok make a disturbing discovery. A science lab on the Equinox, that would be the lab of dark secrets I alluded to a moment ago, which Ransom said was inaccessible due to excess radiation, is being flooded with radiation on purpose. Almost like they've got something to hide. Dark secrets, perhaps? Janeway wants to know what's in the lab and doesn't want to wait for all that radiation to clear, so she sends the holographic doctor in with his mobile emitter to check it out. The doctor snoops around in the lab and finds a chamber containing the corpse of one of the flying space tadpoles. After looking around a little more, the doctor figures out that the Equinox crew have figured out a way to convert the space tadpoles into fuel for their warp drive. And according to the computer records, they've captured and killed dozens of the creatures in the course of doing this. Janeway places Ransom and Burke under arrest. She says, "So, you've been mass murdering these flying space tadpoles to make gas for your ship? No wonder they're so pissed at you." Ransom's like, "Okay, yes, I know it looks bad, but this all started out completely innocently. We met these other aliens, see? And they summoned the flying space tadpoles because they believe them to be spirits of good fortune. We just so happened to notice these spirits of good fortune throw out a ton of antimatter, so we got our hands on one of the magic whistles they used to call the tadpoles, and we lured one to our ship and captured it, and it died because apparently they can't survive in our universe very long. Anyway, since it was dead anyway, we converted its corpse into fuel, and it turns out our engines run really good on dead space tadpole. And sure, we've done it a bunch of times since then, and we're hoping to do it a bunch more times until we got back home, but we'd lost half our crew. Our ship was all beat up. We were filthy and living on emergency rations. We were desperate. Can you blame us?" Yes. Janeway orders the Equinox crew confined, while Voyager's crew works on a way to make peace with the flying space tadpoles. But all is not lost for Ransom and company. It turns out the Equinox has a holographic doctor of its own, and when Voyager's doctor activates him to get some help opening encrypted files, Equidoc reveals that his ethical program has been disabled, and then he knocks out the doctor with a well-placed swat to the mobile emitter and takes his place. Disguised as Voyager's doctor, Equidoc breaks out Ransom and the Equinox crew. Ransom and his people return to the Equinox, except for Equidoc, who remains on Voyager, and they steal Voyager's modified field emitter, so they can more easily capture the space tadpoles. Also, 7 of 9 is aboard the Equinox when the crew returns, so she gets knocked out and taken prisoner. The Equinox flies away while Voyager is attacked by a swarm of pissed-off space tadpoles. One of them is about to attack Captain Janeway and turn her into an insta-mummy when... To be continued. Oh, man. If I cared about any of these characters, it sure would have been a long summer back in 1999. Fortunately for me, I didn't, and fortunately for you, I'm reviewing both parts. It turns out Janeway's okay. She and Chakotay just got nicked by space tadpoles, and I guess when you only get nicked, it's not that big of a deal. Janeway manages to restore the shields to hold off the space tadpoles, and she makes finding the Equinox the #1 priority. Over on the Equinox, Captain Ransom is enjoying a peaceful moment on the rocky coast thanks to his VR headset when they bring in the captured 7 of 9. Ransom invites her to join his crew, but she's like, nah. They grind up some space tadpole and try to pour it into the gas tank, but Gilmore discovers that they can't because 7 of 9 has password protected the gas tank and she's not giving it up. So Burke takes 7 to sickbay and activates the doctor who was left behind when Equidoc took his place and went to Voyager. Burke deletes the doctor's ethical program to make him just as evil as Equidoc and orders him to extract the password from 7's Borg brain by any means necessary. Ransom takes the Equinox to a nearby planet where he thinks they can hide from Voyager while they make repairs and try to get the password to their gas tank from Seven. He sends an away team to the planet to search for valuable resources they could collect in the meantime, but Voyager has already located the Equinox, and Chakotay leads an away team of his own to capture the Equinox away team, which includes Lessing. Remember him? I told you to remember him. Voyager and Equinox have a brief battle that ends with Voyager damaged and Equinox getting away. Janeway handcuffs Lessing to a chair in a cargo bay and says, "Here's the deal. Tell me what I want to know about the Equinox, or I'll drop the shields in this section of the ship and let those space tadpoles fly in here and turn you into an insta-mummy." Lessing's like, "I ain't saying nothing." So Janeway and Chakotay walk out, and Janeway turns off the shields. Chakotay's like, "Aren't you taking this Dirty Harry routine a little far? Those space tadpoles will kill him." Janeway insists that Lessing will crack before that happens, but Chakotay isn't so sure, and when he hears one of the space tadpole portals opening in the cargo bay, he rushes in and rescues Lessing. Lessing shares some helpful information about finding the aliens that told the Equinox crew about the space tadpoles in the first place, but Janeway is pissed at Chakotay for interrupting her torture session, so she relieves him of duty. They find one of the aliens, called the Ankari, and the Ankari agrees to use his magic whistle to call the space tadpoles so Janeway can try and apologize. The space tadpoles aren't hearing it, so Janeway makes a deal with them. If they stop attacking Voyager, she will let them have the Equinox. Tuvok objects, and Janeway's like, "Do you want Chakotay too? Because so help me God, I will Chakotay your ass." The Doctor is still working on getting the password from Seven's brain, so Captain Ransom decides to take another relaxing trip to the coast. Only somehow, 7 of 9 has infiltrated Ransom's VR headset. Or maybe she's just a manifestation of his own guilty conscience, I don't really know. Anyway, she tells him to stop killing the space tadpoles. He refuses. She transforms into a space tadpole, and Ransom takes off the VR headset and thinks, maybe she has a point. And he goes to the bridge and announces that he has changed his mind, and they're going to stop killing the space tadpoles and be friends with Voyager from now on. Burke's not on board with that. He relieves Ransom of command and has Gilmore escort him to the brig. Only Gilmore doesn't take him to the brig because she's still loyal to Captain Ransom. They go to engineering instead, and Ransom hails Janeway on Voyager, which has caught up with the Equinox again. Ransom informs Janeway about his change of heart and offers to beam the Equinox crew over to Voyager. Janeway agrees, but Burke and the officers on the bridge realize what Ransom is doing and try to block him. Ransom still manages to beam most of his crew, plus 7 and the Doctor, back to Voyager. The Doctor deletes the evil Equidoc. The space tadpoles are breaking through and attacking the Equinox. Burke refuses to surrender to Voyager and makes a run for the shuttle bay, but he gets insta-mummied along the way. Janeway tries to beam Ransom aboard before the Equinox explodes, but he chooses to go down with his heavily damaged ship, flying at a safe distance from Voyager before it explodes. He takes refuge in his VR headset, enjoying one last peaceful view of the coast in his final moments. We get a captain's log from Janeway letting us know that everything is back to normal. She reviews the Equinox crew who were brought aboard and informs them that as punishment for taking part in Captain Ransom's space tadpole torture experiments, they will be busted down to crewmen, forced to work on Voyager under close supervision, and never seen again except maybe once or twice as background. Then Janeway reconciles with Chakotay, admitting that maybe she took things a little far in her determination to capture Ransom. They find Voyager's dedication plaque, which was knocked off the wall during their last battle with the Equinox. Chakotay says, "Let's put it back up where it belongs," echoing something Janeway said when she and Captain Ransom found the Equinox's dedication plaque in similar condition back in Part 1. Ah, dramatic symmetry. The end. I realized I was wearing the wrong hat, so I switched. There are certain episodes of Voyager, especially from past the midpoint of the series, where it feels like the creators are starting to realize that maybe they haven't taken full advantage of the creative opportunities of their show, and they decide to really make an effort, to attempt to say something, to imbue the series with a thematic focus and a deeper meaning that is usually lacking. Equinox is one of those episodes, and well, I appreciate the effort. The concept is strong. The Voyager crew encounters another Starfleet ship in a predicament similar to their own, only the crew of this other ship has resorted to some truly heinous methods in order to survive and make their way back home. The Equinox can serve as a mirror image to Voyager and also as a grim reminder of what might have been. What if Voyager's situation in the Delta Quadrant had gotten as bad as fast as the Equinox's? Would Janeway have acted similarly to Ransom if she had been as desperate as he was? These are provocative questions that the episode kind of engages with a little bit. Throughout both halves of the episode, the focus is mainly on the action. It's a very plot-driven episode. There are nods in the direction of characterization, Burke being B'Elanna's ex, Gilmore feeling guilty about going along with the space tadpole experiments, but they never go anywhere that isn't necessary to move the plot along. The closest the episode comes to using the premise to say something truly meaningful about the characters is when Janeway becomes single-mindedly obsessed with catching the Equinox and capturing Captain Ransom. I get what they're going for. Janeway is so infuriated at how blatantly Ransom has thrown his morality aside that she's willing to throw her own morality aside in order to catch him. But like so much else about the episode, it only works up to a point. The idea is that Janeway recognizes Ransom as her shadow self, a captain who makes choices she might have made too if she had been in his shoes. But Janeway doesn't like that, because the choices Ransom has made to murder innocent beings in order to power his ship and keep the hopes of returning home alive are monstrous. She's determined to stop him, to defeat him, to validate herself and her choices, to prove to herself as much as to Ransom that her way is the right way. But she's so dedicated to that end that she begins to rely on some very Ransom-like means in order to achieve it. I like where the episode is going with it, but for me, it never quite gets there. Much of the problem lies with Ransom. Janeway's characterization has been inconsistent throughout the series. Sometimes she's a strictly by-the-book captain, other times she's an anything-goes space cowboy, but for this episode, I'm willing to accept her as the upholder of rules and protocol because that's the story they've chosen to tell, and her motivations are as personal as they are professional and philosophical. Ransom, however, never develops beyond what he represents. He is what Janeway doesn't want to be, what she wants to believe she is not. But he's not a person. He doesn't feel real. Even the glimmers of humanity and self-awareness he displays play as calculations to enable the plot, not facets of genuine character and personality. His last-second change of heart feels sudden and arbitrary. One quick guilt trip from Seven of Nine, who may or may not be a figment of his imagination, and he decides to do a complete 180 and surrender to Janeway. And it's a good thing he does, too. There are only a few minutes left in the episode, and his decision leads directly to the resolution. Every other potentially interesting or meaningful bit of character development is also commandeered in service to the plot. The history between B'Elanna and Burke's teased conflict with Tom are just window dressing for Burke to carry out the plan to steal Voyager's field emitter. The evil Equinox version of the Doctor switching places with Voyager's Doctor goes nowhere in terms of character. Equidoc uses his position on Voyager to secretly assist Ransom and the others aboard the Equinox, but he's never found out or even suspected of being an imposter, and he's unceremoniously deleted once Voyager's Doctor returns. Lessing's early connection with Seven is completely abandoned and is only there to establish him so he can be a minor character for Janeway to torture later. The shame of it is, for all the characterization that is pushed aside to move the plot along, the plot isn't even that great or that well executed. A lot happens, but much of it feels like it's only there to pad this out to a two-parter. And not only are there a lot of plot contrivances thinly disguised as characterization, there's also a sadistic amount of technobabble, even for Voyager. When the Doctor enters the irradiated lab aboard the Equinox and discovers their dark secret, what should be a dramatic and startling reveal is smothered by all the expository technobabble the Doctor is given to say. The attack on Voyager by the flying space tadpoles that ends Part 1 on a supposed note of incredible suspense is easily fended off at the start of Part 2 after Janeway pushes a couple of buttons on a control panel and declares that she's reinforced the shields with a deflector pulse. Oh, good, I was just about to suggest that. None of the guest characters from the Equinox leave much of an impression, and neither do the actors portraying them. John Savage gets special guest star billing as Captain Ransom, but his performance rarely consists of more than a cool voice and a single facial expression. He's an excellent actor, generally speaking, but here he seems stuck in a one-note Robert Patrick impression. Burke is played by Titus Welliver, another actor who has done terrific work in film and television for decades, but here he just can't seem to find his gear. Welliver seems to particularly struggle with the technobabble, not so much with pronouncing it as with making it sound like his character has any idea what he's saying, and he seems emotionally absent from most of his scenes. Olivia Birkeland plays Gilmore, and she's sympathetic, which is more than her fellow Equinox characters manage to get across. And Lessing is played by Rick Worthy, who guested several other times on Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Enterprise as assorted aliens and robots, and who has entirely too much charisma and screen presence to be wasted like this. I've been pretty hard on this episode, but I want you to know that it's not all bad. The design of the Equinox itself is cool. The character design of the flying space tadpoles is excellent. Their body language and movements when they fly are charming and whimsical enough when seen at a distance that I can believe the Ankari took them to be spirits of good fortune, but they're also scary enough up close to make a credible threat. And the creators of the episode, particularly David Livingston, who directed both parts, saved the best for last. First impressions are important, but so are parting impressions, especially in storytelling. You want to leave the audience at just the right time, in just the right way. And for all its many shortcomings, Equinox absolutely nails the ending like few other Voyager episodes ever have. In a single continuous shot, we watch as Janeway dresses down the new crew members from the Equinox in the briefing room, exchanges a few lines with Chakotay, then she and Chakotay exit the briefing room and walk out onto the bridge, where Chakotay crosses to the rear of the bridge in the background while the camera tracks to the left to find Janeway in the foreground. Janeway and Chakotay make some small talk at each other from across the bridge, then they both move back to the right and meet on the side, where Janeway acknowledges that she took things too far in her pursuit of Ransom, and they find Voyager's fallen dedication plaque. It's a remarkable, elegant shot, moving from the briefing room to various points on the bridge, from Janeway to Chakotay to the plaque on the floor, and back to Janeway and Chakotay without a single cut. And there's nothing gratuitous about it. The shot tells the story. The conflict between Janeway and Chakotay is reheated. We've seen them go through something similar at least a couple of times before by this point in the series, but the way this shot does such a good job of illustrating it and resolving it visually, I almost don't care. Janeway and Chakotay are separated in both the briefing room and on the bridge, Janeway in the foreground, Chakotay out of focus in the background, the physical distance between them reinforcing how far apart their characters have grown through the story. Then they come back together. The rift between them closes physically and emotionally, with the ultimate closure coming when Chakotay takes the dedication plaque and unknowingly repeats Janeway's words about the Equinox's dedication plaque from Part 1. Let's put it back up where it belongs. Reconciliation, repair. It's not just functional coverage. It's not just pushing information out to the audience. It's storytelling. It's filmmaking. It's maybe the best shot in all of Voyager. Equinox is mostly underwhelming, but through its premise, the episode is at least trying to say something about our heroes and specifically about Janeway. The person she is, the choices she has made, how uncomfortably similar she is to Ransom, how little it might take to push her into the same dark territory in which he found himself lost. The crew of the Equinox gave themselves permission to murder others to improve their own desperate situation. And the episode tells us they were wrong for doing that, which is a message an alarmingly large number of people in the world still need to hear. I do appreciate the effort, even though the episode it was put toward doesn't turn out to be worth it. The fact that this mostly mediocre episode ends with such an amazing final shot is actually kind of perfect, because in addition to everything else about it, that shot illustrates one of the most exasperating things about Voyager as a series. When its creators put forth the effort, or are allowed to put forth the effort, they're capable of doing outstanding work. But every time they do put in that effort, it ultimately serves to remind us of all the times they don't. Those are my thoughts on Equinox. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. That wraps it up for the Starfleet Gone Bad batch. As with previous batches, if I didn't review an episode you were hoping I would this time, don't worry. There will be another Starfleet Gone Bad batch at some point. For now, we're moving on to a new batch and a new theme, and that theme is episodes with aging-related wackiness. Characters suddenly becoming old or suddenly becoming young. That sort of thing. I'm calling this batch All Ages, and I'm starting it off with a review of an episode of Star Trek the Original Series titled The Deadly Years. See you next time for that. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.